Why the paperless future never happened. For decades, people believed paper was dying. Computers would replace filing cabinets. Email would replace letters. Digital files would eliminate mountains of documents forever. By the 1990s, experts were confidently predicting the arrival of a paperless future. And honestly, it sounded inevitable. Why keep shelves full of paper when a computer could store everything? But something strange happened. Instead of disappearing, paper survived. Offices kept printing. Governments kept archiving. Schools kept handing out worksheets. Even in the age of cloud computing and smartphones, the modern world still runs on paper. And while society was trying to eliminate paper, it quietly built something even larger in its place. Massive digital infrastructure, endless backups, and giant data centers consuming enormous amounts of energy. Just to preserve information. The paperless future did arrive, just not the way anyone expected. This is the forgotten story of why paper never truly disappeared. The promise of a paperless world. For much of the late 20th century, the idea of a paperless future sounded less like a prediction and more like an inevitability. As computers began entering offices, schools, and homes during the 1970s and 1980s, people imagined a world where towering filing cabinets, overflowing desks, and endless stacks of paper would soon become relics of the past. Technology magazines showed futuristic offices with sleek computer terminals and spotless desks. Businesses invested heavily in digital systems, convinced that paper was on its way out. The logic seemed obvious. Why waste entire rooms storing paper documents when computers could hold thousands of files in a machine small enough to sit on a desk? Why print memos when email could send messages instantly? Why archive mountains of paperwork when digital storage promised speed, organization, and nearly unlimited capacity? By the 1990s, the rise of the internet accelerated these expectations even further. Many experts believed society was entering a new digital age that would fundamentally transform how humans stored and shared information. Newspapers discussed electronic offices. Companies promised revolutionary software that would eliminate paperwork forever. Some even argued that reducing paper use would help save forests and dramatically reduce waste. The paperless office became one of the most powerful technological visions of the era, and for a moment, it truly looked like it might happen. Computers became faster, hard drives became cheaper, email spread rapidly through workplaces around the world, scanners allowed physical documents to be converted into digital files. By the early 2000s, many people believed paper had entered a slow but irreversible decline. But hidden beneath all of this optimism was a contradiction few people noticed at the time. As technology made creating information easier than ever before, humans began producing vastly more information than they ever had in history. And instead of eliminating paper completely, the digital revolution would transform humanity into something unexpected, a civilization dependent on both paper and massive digital systems at the same time. Why people thought paper would disappear. The belief in a paperless future did not come from fantasy alone. For decades, technological progress seemed to point directly toward the end of paper as a major part of daily life. By the late 20th century, computers were rapidly transforming workplaces across the world. Tasks that once required physical documents could suddenly be completed digitally. Businesses no longer needed typewriters to create professional reports. Spreadsheets replaced handwritten accounting books. Databases allowed companies to organize enormous amounts of information without relying on rows of filing cabinets. Then came email. Before email became common, communication inside offices depended heavily on paper. Memos were printed and distributed by hand. Letters took days to arrive. Important documents were copied, mailed, and physically stored for future reference. Email changed all of that almost overnight. Messages could be delivered instantly, across entire companies or even across continents. To many people, this felt like the beginning of the end for paper. At the same time, digital storage technology improved rapidly. Early computers had very limited memory, but by the 1980s and 1990s, hard drives could store thousands of pages worth of information. CDs, floppy disks, and later USB drives made transporting files easier than carrying stacks of documents, businesses began investing heavily in digital archives. Believing computers would eventually replace physical storage entirely, the rise of the internet pushed these ideas even further. Suddenly, newspapers, books, manuals, and records could exist online instead of on shelves. Many futurists imagined homes and offices where nearly every document would be viewed on screens instead of printed on paper. Environmental concerns also strengthened the paperless movement. As awareness of deforestation and industrial waste grew, many people believed reducing paper use would help protect forests and lower pollution. Technology companies often marketed digital tools as cleaner and more efficient alternatives to traditional paperwork. By the 1990s, the paperless office had become one of the defining technological promises of the modern age. Businesses saw it as a way to reduce costs. Environmentalists viewed it as a way to save resources. Technology companies treated it as proof that society was entering a smarter, more advanced future. And yet, despite all these predictions, something unexpected began happening. The more computers spread through society, the more information people created, and much of it still ended up on paper. The unexpected explosion of information. One of the biggest assumptions behind the paperless future was simple. If information became digital, there would be less of it to manage physically. But in reality, the exact opposite happened. Computers did not reduce the amount of information humans produced. They multiplied it. Before digital systems, creating documents required effort. Writing a report meant typing or handwriting it, printing it, and distributing it physically. Photocopying was slow and limited. Editing was difficult, often requiring entire pages to be rewritten. Because of these limitations, the total amount of written information in daily life was naturally constrained. Digital tools removed those barriers almost completely. With word processors, documents could be created instantly, edited endlessly, and duplicated at almost no cost. Emails replaced short conversations, but they also encouraged people to send far more messages than ever before. Instead of one formal memo, there might now be dozens of replies, forwards, drafts, and copies of the same idea moving through a company. This shift led to something unexpected. Communication exploded. In offices, workers who once handled a few paper memos per day were suddenly receiving hundreds of emails. Reports became longer because editing was easier. Presentations multiplied because slides could be copied and modified quickly. Information no longer had to be carefully limited. It could be generated freely and continuously. And this wasn't just happening in workplaces. The internet accelerated the effect on a global scale. Websites, blogs, forums, and later social media platforms created an endless stream of new content. Every individual now had the ability to publish thoughts, documents, images, and videos instantly. What used to be controlled by publishers or institutions became accessible to everyone. Instead of reducing paperwork, digital systems created entirely new categories of information that had never existed before. At the same time, organizations discovered they could not simply delete physical records. Many industries require documentation for legal, financial, or regulatory reasons. Contracts, signatures, and official records were often still printed and stored physically as a safeguard. Even when documents were created digitally, they were frequently printed for review, approval, or archival purposes. Paradoxically, the easier it became to store information digitally, the more cautious people became about losing it. Companies began printing copies of important files just in case. Governments preserved physical archives alongside digital databases. Schools continued using printed materials because they were reliable, accessible, and simple to distribute. Instead of replacing paper, computers increased the volume of information so dramatically that paper remained useful as a stable, physical backup. And beneath all of this, another hidden system was growing quietly in the background, one that would become essential to modern life: the infrastructure needed to store, process, and protect all of this exploding digital information. Why paper refused to die. Despite decades of predictions about its disappearance, paper never truly went away. Instead, it adapted. surviving alongside digital technology in ways few people expected. One of the strongest reasons paper persisted is simple: reliability. Paper does not need electricity, internet access, passwords, or software updates. It does not crash, freeze, or become corrupted by file errors. A printed document can be read anywhere, at any time, without special tools. In situations where digital systems fail, power outages, technical glitches, or cyberattacks, paper remains stable and accessible. This made it especially important in fields where accuracy and permanence matter. Governments, courts, hospitals, and financial institutions all continued to rely on physical records for critical information. Legal contracts, identification documents, medical files, and official archives often required paper copies, not just for convenience, but for trust and verification. In many cases, a physical signature on paper still carried more legal weight than a digital equivalent. Another reason paper survived is human behavior itself. Reading on paper feels different from reading on a screen. Many people find it easier to focus, annotate, and understand complex material when it is printed. Long documents, textbooks, and reports are often more comfortable to review physically. Even in highly digital environments, printed copies remain common for meetings, editing, and studying. Education also played a major role in preserving paper. Schools and universities continued to use printed textbooks, worksheets, and exams because they are practical, durable, and easy to distribute. While digital learning tools expanded, they rarely replaced paper entirely. Instead, they added another layer on top of it. Cost and accessibility further reinforce paper's survival. In many places, printing a document is still faster or more practical than navigating digital systems. Not everyone has equal access to devices, stable internet, or technical skills. Paper provides a universal format that requires no learning curve and works for nearly everyone. There is also the issue of habit and infrastructure. Entire industries were built around paper: publishing, printing, packaging, administration, and archiving. These systems did not vanish overnight. Even as digital tools spread, organizations found it easier to add technology than to completely replace established paper-based workflows. Over time, a hybrid system emerged. Digital tools became dominant for communication, storage, and speed, while paper remained for stability, legality, education, and human preference. Rather than being replaced, paper became one half of a dual system, quietly supporting the digital world behind the scenes. In the end, paper did not survive because technology failed. It survived because it solved problems that digital systems could not fully eliminate. And instead of becoming obsolete, it found a permanent place in a world that was never fully paperless after all. The hidden cost of digital. When the digital revolution accelerated, it was often described as clean, efficient, and almost weightless. Information no longer needed paper, ink, storage rooms, or physical transport. Everything could exist in the cloud, accessible instantly from anywhere in the world. For a long time, this created the impression that digital systems were not only more advanced, but also nearly cost-free. But behind that simplicity was a hidden reality. Digital does not mean weightless. It just means the weight is less visible. Every email sent, every photo stored, every video streamed, and every document saved requires physical infrastructure. Data does not float in space. It is stored on hard drives, solid-state memory systems, and massive server farms located in buildings, designed specifically to hold and process information. These facilities are called data centers, and they form the backbone of the modern internet. At first glance, a single file seems insignificant, but multiplied across billions of users and trillions of interactions, the scale becomes enormous. Entire warehouses filled with servers are required. Just to keep the digital world running, these facilities must operate continuously, 24 hours a day, without interruption. They require constant cooling systems to prevent overheating, backup power supplies to avoid downtime, and complex networks of maintenance and security systems. In many ways, the digital world is not less physical than the paper world. It is simply more centralized and hidden from view. Another hidden cost is energy consumption. Storing and transmitting data requires electricity on a massive scale. Every time a video is streamed or a file is uploaded, servers are working in the background to process and deliver that information. While individual actions feel small, the combined global demand for data has grown into one of the largest consumers of energy in the modern economy. There is also the issue of redundancy. Unlike paper, which can exist as a single physical copy, digital information is often duplicated many times for safety. Backups are stored across multiple servers, sometimes in different countries, to prevent data loss. While this improves reliability, it also increases the total amount of storage required. What looks like one file to a user may actually exist in dozens of copies behind the scenes. Security adds another layer of complexity. Digital systems must be constantly protected from hacking, corruption, and system failure. Entire industries exist to maintain encryption, monitor threats, and repair vulnerabilities. In this sense, the digital world is not passive, it is actively maintained at all times. Even environmentally, the shift to digital is more complicated than it first appears. While it reduces paper consumption in some areas, it increases demand for rare materials used in electronics, as well as the energy needed to power global networks. The invisible infrastructure of the internet has a real physical footprint that continues to grow each year. The irony is clear. The paperless future did not eliminate physical cost, it relocated it. Instead of paper mills and filing cabinets, the modern world depends on server farms, cooling systems, and vast energy networks. Digital information may feel weightless, but in reality, it rests on one of the largest and most resource-intensive infrastructures ever built. The future, hybrid, not paperless conclusion. After decades of predictions, technological breakthroughs, and rapid digital transformation, the idea of a fully paperless world has never truly arrived. Instead, what emerged was something far more practical and far more realistic. A hybrid system where paper and digital technology coexist, each serving roles the other cannot fully replace. Digital systems now dominate how information is created, shared, and stored. Communication moves instantly across the world. Entire industries operate through cloud networks and software platforms. Most modern documents are born digital, never touching paper in their earliest form. In many ways, the world that futurists once imagined has partially come true. But paper never disappeared. It remained embedded in the places where reliability, simplicity, and physical permanence still matter. Contracts are still printed and signed. Schools still rely on textbooks and worksheets. Governments still maintain physical archives. Even in highly advanced digital environments, paper continues to serve as a backup, a reference, or a more comfortable medium for reading and decision-making. What emerged over time was not a replacement, but a balance. Digital systems excel at speed, scale, and accessibility. They allow information to be copied, shared, and updated instantly, but they depend on infrastructure, energy, security, and constant maintenance. Paper, on the other hand, is slow and limited but stable, independent, and immune to technical failure. Each solves problems the other cannot fully address. This balance is why the paperless future never arrived in the way people once imagined. Instead of a clean transition from physical to digital, society moved into a layered system where both coexist. Digital tools handle the flow of information, while paper often provides the foundation of trust, clarity, or permanence underneath it. Even today, as technology continues to advance with artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and global connectivity, paper still finds a role. It adapts rather than disappears, shifting into areas where human behavior, regulation, or practicality keep it relevant. In the end, the story of paper is not one of extinction, but of persistence. The prediction of a paperless world was not entirely wrong. It simply underestimated how complex human systems are and how rarely one technology fully replaces another. The future, it turns out, was never paperless. It was hybrid all along.